This week's 1044 is brought to you by Chevron Delos 600 ADF Ultra Low Ash Diesel Engine Oil. It's time to kick some ash. With about 150% return on investing in a fluid analysis program, there's really no good reason not to do it. Hey everybody, and welcome to the 1044, a weekly webisode from the editors here at CCJ. I'm Jason Cannon, and as always, my co-host on the other side is Matt Cole. There are hundreds of gallons of fluids on a truck. Engine oil, coolant, diesel, and those are just the ones I could quickly rattle off the top of my head. And all those fluids have different needs when it comes to preventive maintenance.
For example, about 40% of all engine-related failures are traced back to the coolant, and a high-quality testing program would identify coolant degradation before a driver finds himself parked on the side of the highway. It's worth bearing in mind, too, that ambient temperatures in some parts of the U.S. are already hitting 90 degrees.
The good thing about coolant testing is that it's less complex than engine oil testing, but the insight that it gives you is just as valuable. We spoke with Jay Russo, National Accounts Manager for Chevron Lubricants, who said coolant testing can be done in-house versus using a third-party lab.
Refractometers can be used, test strips. It really depends on the technology of the coolant that you're using to make sure that you're marrying up the proper testing procedures that match along with that to make sure that the additive levels are at the right level and your pH is at the right level, and you're checking freeze point with a refractometer. One of the two easiest and best tests for coolants is the smell and the visual test. You know, if it looks like the coolant that you put in there, it's probably still doing good, and as long as it smells like coolant, you're halfway home.
Since the health reports you get from fluid tests are so important, Jay says it's important not to cut corners or seek out the cheapest test possible. Because if you're not putting good data in, you won't get good data out.
It's all about sample, the quality of your sample. If you take an oil sample and you take it out of the, when you drop the drain plug and you're pulling it out of what's flowing out, it's probably a decent sample, but it's probably not the best sample. It's not the best representative of taking it out of the dipstick or a port or anything like that, where you're getting a true representative of what's actually flowing through that engine or that component. As far as coolant goes, there's lots of different technologies out there, lots of different test strips. You got to make sure that you're marrying the right technology with the right test strips. You'll never be able to test freeze point with a test strip that I know of. Refractometer is an easy way to do that. I mean, all this equipment we're talking about, you can spend for a couple $100 on Amazon and get this equipment and be able to do this the right way. The labs sell equipment. Chevron, we sell the equipment to make this stuff happen and make it easy for you. We've kind of packaged everything up into a box that includes sample bottles, things like that. But there's a process, and to do it the right way does take a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. But doing it the right way and making sure that when you're using that tubing on the vacuum pump, that you're clearing that tubing and pulling one sample bottle and dumping it and putting a new fresh sample container on there and pulling a really good representative. And then that tubing, you don't want to just take that out of the one truck and throw it into the other truck. You got to dispose of that stuff and start from fresh, because you don't want to cross contaminate between units. So there is a process. There is some unique equipment that goes along with it. That's one of the big things around all fluid analysis, is making sure that the data that you provide to the labs is as accurate as possible. Unit numbers, whatever the product is that you're sampling, because they represent that against a representative sample that they have that's in the system already, of that as new oil, things along those lines.
If you contaminate a fluid sample, you can't get an accurate picture of what's going on with that fluid. And Jay said one of the major pieces that most fleets miss when submitting a sample is really fundamentally very simple. What is it? He tells us right after this word from 1044 sponsor, Chevron Lubricants. Protecting your diesel engine and its after-treatment system has traditionally been a double-edged sword. The same engine oil that is so essential to protecting your engine's internal parts is also responsible for 90% of the ash that is clogging up your DPF and upping your fuel and maintenance costs. Outdated industry thinking still sees a trade-off between engine and emission system protection, and Chevron was tired of it. So they spent a decade of R&D developing a no-compromise formulation. Chevron Lubricants developed a new ultra-low ash diesel engine oil that is specifically designed to combat DPF ash clogging. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology cuts sulfate ash by a whopping 60%, which reduces the rate of DPF clogging and extends DPF service life by 2.5 times. And just think what you can do with all the MPGs you're going to add from cutting your number of regens. But Delo 600 ADF isn't just about after treatment. It provides complete protection, extending drain intervals by preventing oil breakdown. Before, you had to choose between protecting your engine or your after treatment system, and now you don't. 600 ADF from Delo with OmniMax technology, it's time to kick some ash.
One of the biggest tools I see that shops are missing when they're doing oil sampling is lint-free rags. And a lot of times we find lint in oil samples, and it's like, how'd they get in there? And it's like, oh, they must not have used a lint-free rag when they wiped off, whatever the sample port or the drain plug, wherever it was, so you get some of that stuff in the sample. So it's pretty interesting when we see that kind of stuff.
Coolant testing, engine oil testing, transmission fluid testing. If I just stop there, I have 3 data feeds of information, and that can feel overwhelming, considering that just reading the reports isn't all a fleet has to do to keep the truck moving. Jay says it's important to customize how you want to receive reports and what you want them to say, otherwise you risk them just becoming white noise and just one more thing to read.
I see, some fleet managers where they will take an envelope and they get it mailed to them, and that's the way they want, and it sits on their desk, and when they have a couple of minutes, they'll go through and start opening them and looking at the color at the top. And if it's red, they'll probably take it out and they'll read it. If it's green, they might not ever look at it. And if it's yellow, they might take it out of the envelope and set it on a stack and look at it, because you'll get those green, yellow, red based on the severity of what's going on with that sample. It's just part of it. But, having a partner in a lab or, partner like Chevron, where we would have regular cadence of reviews of the data, where we would do some of that trending analysis for you, or the lab would for a fee. And, or like I said, you can do that yourself. If you had a cadence where you wanted to go in once a month and look at all your samples, it's really easy to do. You set up dashboards, you set up reports, and it's just kind of a refresh thing. And you get in there and get it. The tools are really intuitive, and it's really a nice way to trend your data and analyze what's going on with each individual unit that you have, to be able to identify any issues, before they come up. And that's what fluid analysis is all about. It's about predicting the future and lowering your overall operating cost and preventing failure, preventing downtime. The rate of return of these used oil analysis or fluid analysis is about 150%. So if you're spending, between $6 and $10 on a sample, I mean, you're going to be getting that money back in droves by the time you're trying to recoup that from keeping that truck on the road, extending those drain intervals if that's a goal that you have, and predicting the future and predicting failure before it happens. So you might have a unit that's going down. You might have to change the oil more frequently, but it gets you an extra couple 100,000 miles out of that truck. So there's lots of different things, and fluid oil analysis is all about getting you a better bottom line.
Getting the report and all that data is one thing, but what am I supposed to do with it? Jay tells us here.
There's typically a green, yellow, red on the indicator on those reports, and if you see one of those reds, right, they're gonna and with anything, if it's green, the lab's going to give you, it's just continue normal operation. But, red, they might, they're going to give you a little bit of guidance. And I'll give you an example. If you've got an engine oil sample that comes back, that's red, and they say, well, it's got low viscosity, we're seeing some high fuel and soot, within that. And then there's high levels of silicon, which the high level of silicon is typically environmental dirt. So, give you some guidance and say, that there's some cylinder wear due to high silicon in the system or high dirt in the system. It's scoring the cylinder, letting some fuel and soot get past and get into the oil. Recommend change fluid, check your air intake system for leaks. So, they'll give you a little bit of that guidance to at least get you started in the right direction of having a technician go look at that truck, look it over, check the intake system, saying, how are we getting dirt in this system? And then it kind of takes it back with, looking at it from the app view and trending, and say, well, let's look at the last 2 or 3 to see what's been going on. Why are we seeing this? And if it's progressively gotten worse, maybe you recently switched air filter suppliers or something, and you start to really kind of dig into it and say, wow, we didn't have this problem until we switched away from A and went to B, and now we're seeing issues. So we have fitment problems, what's going on? So they're not going to, give you a full diagnosis. They're going to give you some suggestions, and then they'll tell you, if you didn't change the oil at the time of this sample, change the oil. Or they'll say, that you can continue to operate on this fluid because there's always a checkbox that says, was the fluid changed at this sample or not? And you indicate that. As far as more support than that, if you're a large fleet and you want to look at, you want somebody to present to you on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, how your fleet is performing as far as usual analysis goes, they can offer that, but it'll probably come with a fee. One of the things that about Chevron, we provide that second level customer support to our customers as a value added service already. There's a lot of things that can be provided. Some of it's stuff you have to pay for, but with a good quality lubricant supplier that we're usually always there to help.
Whether you use an in-house method or partner with a third party or your lube supplier, Jay says simply performing high quality tests is critical. Don't look at it as an added expense or your lube supplier trying to sell you more services or products. In fact, Jay says it could be the opposite, because if you're consuming less fluid, you're buying less of it as well.
All the data, we don't manipulate the data. We don't get the data before it comes to the customer. It goes directly to you. It goes to your dashboard. It gets to, mailed, email, however you want that to go. We do through our Lube Watch program, which is what we call our program that we have partnered with these two third-party labs. We do get access to that data. We're not able to write it or manipulate it, but we get to actually view that data so we can help with that analysis of that with our customers. And we do a lot of that. We've got a team of STLE accredited representatives that are ready to look at these samples and analyze them and report back. We just need some communication, with the customer and understanding what their expectations are. And we're more than happy to help, provide that as a value added service to our customers. But like I say, the labs, they do the same thing. They can provide that as well, but usually there's a fee associated with that. The long-term benefits here is all around cost savings. You might think, well, you got to spend money to make money, right? But the industry average is about 150% return on what you're actually spending on those samples. And you get a lot of that stuff there's a couple of different ways, right? There's extended life of the actual vehicle, right? So the vehicle is going to last longer if you take better care of it. And you know what's going on in that engine. You're going to have increased uptime because you'll be able to head off some of those unexpected failures before they come. So it costs a lot more money to fix a truck while it's down on the road than it is while it's in your shop and you need to do a little bit of work on it. So you're saving a lot of money there. Like I said, you're going to get longer life out of the equipment. And you have the opportunity for extended drains. So you can optimize those drain intervals and those PM schedules based on what's going on with the fluid analysis.
That's it for this week's 1044. You can read more on ccjdigital.com. And as always, you can find the 1044 each week on CCJ's YouTube channel. And if you've got questions, comments, criticisms, or feedback, please hit us up at 1044trucking@gmail.com or give us a call at 404-491-1380. Until next week, everybody stay safe.